Okay, we are live. We are live.
So exciting.
It is exciting. I think we should just leave, let's give like a minute or so for people to start walking it, to come in.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
And
we can catch our breath.
Catch our breath. I was expecting rain today. I was actually pleasantly surprised that it wasn't. I don't like rain so much.
On the other hand, I was not expecting rain, and we had some in the morning, even though we were not supposed to have, and my laundry got wet.
Oh.
It's all right. It was all right.
No, there was a little bit rainy, but not like heavy. I thought it was going to be like serious rain.
Right. Well, it's supposed to rain on Wednesday, I understand. Like a big rain. Yeah, right?
Yes. Do not put your washing out on Wednesday.
Exactly. That's why I did it.
Exactly.
Planning ahead.
Yeah. Okay, you know what? I think we'll start for the sake of the people who already came in.
Okay.
So, hello everybody. My name is Miri Hoffman. I'm an attorney. I have a private practice in Bet Shemesh, and my main focus is elder law and estate planning. So that's everything to do with wills and enduring power of attorneys and trusts, and with conversations with people of that age group, senior citizens of the golden age. I've noticed that there are all kinds of other topics that people are very much interested in getting to know and have information. So I decided to host these talk sessions with various professionals who deal also with senior citizens to basically expose everybody to the possibilities and their contribution. And today we're talking to Aviva Yoselis, who's a certified patient advocate about navigating the medical system in Israel. So thank you very much, Aviva.
Thank you. This is so fun.
It is fun. And why don't you introduce yourself first?
I will. Oh, thank you. Yes, so my name is Aviva. And I'm actually a new immigrant. I've only been here 25 years. Some days it still feels new. And I've actually worked in the field of health education and health navigation for over 25 years. I started in the States and then I moved to Israel. And about 15 years ago, I started getting more and more involved in helping people navigate the healthcare system because I saw that there was a real need, especially among immigrants and especially among English speakers, because I find that the cultural differences in terms of how you interact with the systems are greatest, I think, when it comes to bureaucracy.
Right.
So I have a master's in public health, and I worked in health research. I had my own company that did medical research coordination in the community. And a few years ago, I actually started working pretty much focused on the issue of helping people navigate and advocate for themselves within the system. And that's what I do now full time. And as you said, I'm actually the first certified patient advocate outside of North America. I had to travel to Malta to do the certification exam.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So I feel very strongly about the issue of being able to help people within the system and not have people flounder.
Okay, so explain to me, because I really don't understand what's a certified patient advocate. How is this different from a social worker or a medical secretary?
Such a good question. I get that all the time. It's funny because I started out the field of public health, which everybody knows now what public health is.
Right.
But when I started, people were like, what? What's public health? What does that mean? So now I just, have fallen into yet another category. But a patient advocate is somebody who helps people, first and foremost, understand the information that they're receiving from the medical system. That could mean, just understanding the terminology, to also understanding what their options are in terms of treatment and very much so in terms of rights. And often in Israel now, we hear the term much more mitsui zchuyot, which is sort of actualizing your rights, if that's the direct translation. But that is an aspect of what a patient advocate is really doing, is helping someone recognize those rights and then actualizing them. Sometimes that could mean just giving the person the accurate information and saying, you know what, this agency handles this problem and you need to call. It could mean also doing that for the person themselves, because for whatever reason, sometimes people are not able to act upon that. Or often when you're in a crisis and, in healthcare, it's just you're inundated, you're overwhelmed. So what I do is I take part of that burden off of people by facilitating discussions, taking care a lot of the bureaucracy, explaining to them how the situation is going to work, and sometimes completing those steps for them also. So a social worker.
Sorry, go ahead.
So a social worker and a nurse and even a medical secretary are often doing aspects of patient advocacy, even though they don't call themselves that. And I personally think that it's sort of part of the job definition of a social worker or of a nurse, to do an advocate, especially if she's working in the healthcare field. But it really depends on the individual, whether she interprets her own job as having those aspects or not. So it's something that is not, it's not learned. It's sort of learned. It's sort of learned on the job. It's experiential for a lot of those people. And so I sort of have combined the theoretical knowledge that I've learned, my background in public health, which is different than the background of a social worker, and then obviously my personal and professional experience.
Okay. So what issues do you think is important for the older crowd to know as a advocate?
Right. So it is, I work a lot. I mean, I don't exclusively work with, let's say, people who are, they're older adults, but I do work a lot because often people are in, a healthcare crisis, right. And they might feel overwhelmed. And, I know for myself, from having made Aliyah as I was youngish, but I was an adult, and how overwhelming, is. So when you make Aliyah over retirement age, everything is foreign, not just the language, but the culture and people's behaviors, etc. So the first thing that I think it's really important, and I say in a lot of my lectures to people, is no is really just the beginning of the conversation. Meaning, I had a client once who was this lovely British man who called up, he called up an agency and he said, do you provide this treatment? And they said no. And he was like, oh, okay, thank you. And he hung up the phone because he's British and he's polite. They said no, so that was the answer. And, and it turns out, of course they did. He just had to ask in a different way. He had to rephrase it. He had to put the emphasis. Oh, that's what you mean. Oh, yeah, sure, we offer that. So, that's a little bit of the coaching is not to take no as the final answer, but just sort of the beginning of the dialogue.
I thought you were going to say the first thing they should do is take Valium and breathe and then make it.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of breathing. You have to laugh. You really have to laugh. Yeah. An anecdote that was related. I took my father to a surgeon the other day. At the end of his day, I guess he was tired. It's Corona. I was told he wasn't so warm and fluffy, but I'm with my father. I had to ask. We walk in. We're actually standing in the doorway. My dad's the entrance. I'm there. The surgeon looks at me and says in Hebrew, "What's his problem?"
I know. You know what? I get that a lot. I get that a lot from even from my clients where they're complaining, and they're so right that the doctors don't talk to them. They talk to the person sitting next to it. It could be the doctor.
I laughed. It was like a caricature of that situation. So what I'm saying is also sometimes you just have to laugh. You have to kind of let things roll off of you if possible.
Right.
And you really need to choose your battles, meaning you need to go into a situation and you need to say, what is it that I want out of this interaction before you even start the interaction. You know, if I'm going to the doctor because I want that prescription of that medication that really isn't in the basket of services, but, you know, I need him to give me that prescription. So then you have to remember his, you know, you have to sort of have tunnel vision.
Right.
So that's the second. And the third thing that I want to remind people is always get a written summary when you leave a doctor's office, a specialist, not the GP, but any other doctor. It's called the Sikum Bikur. It's a summary of the visit. It's crucial. You're going to need it for lots of other things. Every doctor has to give it to you at the end. Make sure that that you leave with that in your hand.
That's such an important, that is so important to know, because I'm sure that they leave and then they have all these questions, or they forgot actually what was said because they were a little bit nervous and maybe they didn't really understand. And when it's written, then they have it and they can say, oh yeah, I remember that now. That's right.
That, you're definitely for that. And also, you want to apply for Bituach Leumi benefits later on. You want to get a handicap parking sticker. You want to do, you know, you need documentation for all sorts of, you know, various, you want to get a discount on your Anona. You know, that's sort of different because you have to get Bituach Leumi. But being that you're going to need that paper trail to, you know, later on as well for bureaucratic reasons, you know, not to mention the fact that, yes, you need to actually, because unfortunately what happens sometimes is what the doctor says is not what he writes down in the summary.
Aha.
Yes. Yes.
That does happen. What happens if that happens, what do you do? If what he says is not what he wrote?
Right. So if this is one of my clients, so when they've showed me the paper and they said, like, the doctor said, I have to have surgery on my knee, you know, and that is going to help you get, you know, you want to get Bituach Leumi benefits, let's say, for that period after surgery, of which you're eligible for, right? To have somebody come to the home to help you afterward. I said, you know, but the doctor didn't write that. He didn't write that she had to have surgery. He said, you know, patient has pain, has options, sent for physical therapy, you know, also recommended surgery in the future. Now, sometimes it's because the person hears what they want to hear, and sometimes because the doctor isn't always paying attention. So in those cases, when I show the discrepancy to people, I've called up doctors, I've emailed doctors if there's a discrepancy. I encourage, you know, people, often they'll go back. I'll write down exactly what it is that they need to say and they need to bring to their doctor's attention.
And will the doctor say, yes, you're right, I'll write it down? They do that?
I don't know if yes, you're right. That actually, that's great. I'm not sure.
Say yes, you're right. I'm sorry. I forgot where we are. Hello. Yeah.
But often when presented in a sort of objective, non-emotional, you know, we discuss this, but the letter doesn't say that. And could you please correct it? You know, not correct. Could you please change so it says this for Bituach Leumi, for my referral, etc. Then yes.
Okay.
I think what we forget is, and I think also the older you are, you also have an image sort of physicians that, like, they know everything, you know, and doctors are extremely knowledgeable, but the bureaucracy of the system is not something that they are taught in medical school. So the doctor may not know about how you get Bituach Leumi. He may not know, or she may not know what to write on that letter.
Right.
That will help you get, as opposed to not getting it. And I think that there's expectation. Well, they're all in the medical field, so, you know, the doctor knows what. He doesn't always.
Right. So, that's very smart. You're right. The assumption is there's God and then there's the doctor, and then he should know.
Right.
And you don't really think that
the medical bureaucracy, because
and then you don't really.
In addition to diagnosing my skin rash.
Exactly. You don't realize that he doesn't really know everything. Okay. What other examples you can give me or give us of how you can help people with the navigation here?
Right. So, first of all, I urge everybody, and I think at the end also you have my website that you'll show, because I try to put as much as I can on the website for people to be able to access for themselves, people who are looking for summaries of what their rights are and information. So I have a bunch of downloadables there that I give. I'm a huge believer in checklists. So I've got some, checklists that people can download, questions that you need to ask the doctor when you go to the doctor. The other thing that that I'm able to offer people is, as I sort of deal with, because I think I've mentioned this before, the difference also with me, let's say I'm not a case manager. Like sometimes a social worker would be, they're fantastic. There's some great agencies and great people who do that, and they're case managers. I am very focused on, let's resolve the issue.
Uh-huh.
You know, I want to figure out how to get my Bituach Leumi benefits. I had just got off a call before I started talking with you from a previous client who now she had one level of care for her mother, and now she wants to up the level of care, but she was rejected for Bituach Leumi for a variety of reasons. Some she could know, some she wouldn't, but there's very specific things that you can do now.
Okay.
Ways you can ask the doctor information. Things that you need to tell Bituach Leumi, so things like that. Sort of lots of the government forms is what I help people also sort of navigate and figure out. Also, what I do a lot is I help people break things down into steps, into sort of more of an action plan. I have a number of clients who are taking care of spouses who are now no longer able to care for themselves. So
Right.
you have, the overwhelming emotional deal of the person is no longer the person you're married to.
Right.
You've got the practical day-to-day running of your household. You have to manage their medical care, for them. You've got to manage the legal and the financial, and you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself.
Right.
That you're putting things in place, so that later on there won't be problems. Yeah.
Okay. So you're basically, if I understand correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Sure.
a caregiver will, go into a family and deal with like around
You mean a case manager? You mean a case manager? Yeah.
Whereas what you're doing is you're pinpointing an issue to do with medical stuff, and you're attacking that, or you're helping her either process it or cut it up into bite sizes, or to
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So that's why it's sort of a focused, it's a focused niche. And
I was just
another
sorry, there's another thing. Okay, because then I want to
another thing that I was also realizing is that a big part also of what I do is helping people know the options that are available to them. For example, I had a client a few years back who was taking care of his elderly mother, who was she was homebound, she was deteriorating, and really, he didn't know that he could transition to hospice care, that he didn't have to keep trying to access the regular medical system. So, he came to me kind of like, how do I find more hours for my mother? But in the conversation with him, I realized that she was needing and eligible for hospice care. She met the criteria. It would take a load off of him. Then when you bring hospice in, it's like a totally different perspective. You have a social worker, and you have a physician, and you have a nurse, and you have much more of a sort of like holistic supportive environment for both, the caregiver and the patient.
Right.
And also, sort of letting them know what are the different options that are available to you. Some people, they know that they want to be like my parent, like I want them to be hospitalized. If anything happens, I want them just sort of, walking through like what that would look like. And, would you want the person to be at home until the end? Would you want the person to be hospitalized and, sort of definite measures taken? Would you want them to be in a hospice setting? And the thing here is everybody chooses something different depending on the makeup of their family. I had one person who had little kids in the house. So she said, I don't feel comfortable having my father here, who was obviously, needed hospice care, but she felt uncomfortable with her little kids being around that. So, for her, then I help her pursue, the hospital-based hospice care. So then it would be like a telephone call and finding the right hafnaya and, et cetera, hooking her up with a social worker. So, so those are the kinds of, it's not only knowing what your options are and then identifying which one makes the most sense for you. And then how do I actualize that?
Okay. I have another question. I know that, as you get older, it's not just a pinpoint of something medical, like the medical, I don't know, the foot is something to connect it with the heart, which connects to the back, which connects to the spine, which connects, there's a lot of things going on. And what happens a lot of the times is that the client, the person will go to one doctor who will give him X, and then he'll go to the other doctor who will give him Y, and they don't necessarily talk to each other. And it could be that it's A that has to be actually being something that they need to go to a different doctor who will have to see the whole picture and make it completely different. Is that something that you also help with and talk to the client?
I definitely help facilitate that with people. When one of the first things when I come into a situation is I don't do like a long involved assessment. A lot of people feel like that's not how I operate. I operate more from I come in and I try to gather the relevant information that I know I need to see. Is that happening? What you said. And when I hear somebody who I'm taking my mother to this doctor and the cardiologist, and then, there's a lot of bounce back, and the person also has diabetes, and the person also may have Parkinson's, and, so then it's a kind of walking through, like, is there a way to refine this process? Can we choose sort of our one expert? What are our goals here in going, is it balancing out medication? Is it behavioral? Is it, really sort of bringing up the points of how are we emphasizing quality of life? How are we finding it? Because what you find is that when you go to one doctor and he sees, oh, okay, you're having, I think you have asthma. You should go to the pulmonologist. Okay. The doctor isn't thinking to himself, okay, this person in front of me is 89 years old. In order for him to make the appointment with the pulmonologist, he either has to do it himself, which being that the person made Aliyah at 75 and doesn't really speak so much, it probably isn't going to happen, which means he has to ask somebody in his inner circle. They have to look up. They don't have a recommendation for a pulmonologist. So either they'll choose somebody or they want to be more, what's the word? Responsible, the person who said, I want to be responsible. I want to make sure I find the best pulmonologist. So they ask their friend. So that is another 10, 15, 20 phone calls and questions and Facebook posts. And then you find the pulmonologist and then you have to make him and you have to get it. So the doctor isn't thinking, wow, this is really going to be probably like 3 weeks of work, another 6 to 7 weeks maybe of waiting for the appointment. And then what's the person going to do with the appointment when he sees the pulmonologist?
Right.
Is it going to be so sometimes just sort of exploring what is our goal, because again, people say the doctor told me to see A, he gave me the referral, and he told me to go to the doctor. I'm not saying don't go to the doctor, the specialist and the doctor refers to you, but sometimes the doctor doesn't fully understand the whole situation, because you have 7 minutes sometimes to talk to the doctor and he wants to help you. And he says, okay, maybe asthma you need to see. So sometimes just taking a step back and walking through and sort of doing, okay, what are our priorities here? Especially during COVID, when nobody was going out. I mean, hopefully now things will, free up a little bit. But yeah. So the long answer to your short question was yes.
So you basically would walk somebody through that. Exactly. So then somebody would come to you and say, I was told to go to cardiologist. What do I do? How do I move the system here? What are your options?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Definitely. Let's move a little bit towards Bituach Leumi. I know it's a very tricky subject. A lot of people are not really sure what the hell. So try and explain it to us a little bit.
So Bituach Leumi on one foot is in charge of all of your social welfare benefits in the monetary kind. So for somebody who made Aliyah after retirement age, even if they have like
which is 65, which is 65 or 67 in Israel.
67 for a man, right, and 62 for a lady.
Right.
So they're not eligible for, let's say, the disability payments, even if they have, let's say, a chronic illness. However, if they get to a point where they need some level of care in their activities of daily living, and that can mean somebody helping them with shopping, somebody helping them prepare food, somebody clean the house, do more of the heavy lifting kind of thing, then they're eligible to apply to Bituach Leumi CUD, which is like long-term care insurance provision for people who are over pension age.
Okay.
And the thing that I want to point out for people is, first of all, everyone should know that you can apply online. The forms are online, which makes you don't have to go into the office. I talk to so many people like, oh, I have to. I'm like, no, you just do the forms online. It's this is my thing also. It's like a lot of people think I'm strange. I'll tell you a secret, but I love forms. I find I've never
strange, yes.
I've only met one form that I didn't like in my life thus far. I find them very soothing. It's kind of like, I don't know, they're soothing.
Okay, so, there's a method to the madness. I understand where it's
like algebra. I don't know. Anyway, so you're a lawyer. You must like forms, no?
I'm taking the fifth on that one, but okay.
Anyway, but so you fill out the forms online, and now I've completely lost my train of thought.
Is something that you can do online, that you can fill out the forms.
Right, and you're right. And I tell people that there is an income cap, meaning there's two types of criteria for any Bituach Leumi benefit. One is medical; you have to meet the medical criteria, and the second is financial. There is a financial cap. However, I encourage people who aren't sure to apply, because the worst thing that will happen is that they will say you are not eligible because you have too much income. I feel like people are kind of afraid, like then they're going to get a knock on the door and somehow Bituach Leumi is going to, like, I don't know, actually take away their money, or, I don't know, scold them, or, it's not. And what's important is that even if you don't end up getting the money, just the recognition that you would be eligible can help you in the future if you want to get a live-in caregiver, like a foreign worker to come over, or you want, you need other benefits through the Kupat Cholim. So it's if you're in that situation, I always encourage people to apply.
Okay.
So that's sort of Bituach Leumi, and not there's not to be afraid. There's a fear there. I'm not sure where it comes from, if it's like the fear of forms or the fear of bureaucracy or everybody speaks Hebrew, or, the truth is that even in the, period of time that I've lived in this country and I've been working in this field, I see a change in Bituach Leumi, the really, like, people, they do want to help. Like the clerks there want to help. They don't always have the right information, but I'm saying that, you shouldn't be afraid. That shouldn't be a barrier to getting what you need to get.
Okay. Anything else that we should, that would be important for people to know that you want to mention now for Bituach Leumi?
I think it was funny because I was going to say in the beginning, and I somehow I didn't get into that about how I got into this. But yeah. But I tell people, in addition to being in public health and having the professional experience and liking forms, I had 5 children. I have 5 children, beautiful children, each one with their own unique health issue that I had to navigate, by myself in the system, with my Hebrew. And the other thing is that I also have merited to bring my parents over 3.5 years ago, and I'm the primary caregiver for my mother, and my parents live with me. So I get it. I understand that there's the personal.
I think it's really important, actually, that you're living it, sort of thing, so you can get it, which means you can be more accommodating or understanding towards your own clients because you're there.
Yeah. Also, I get, I get those little things, like what I said about the pulmonologist, it's sort of this throwaway line that the doctor will say. And yet, it becomes a burden in a sense. It can be for the person who's caregiving. So, yeah.
100%. Okay. So I'm going to, while I put your contact information so people who want to contact you can do so, why don't you explain to us when somebody would need your services, when wouldn't they need your services?
Right. So, first of all, anybody who is contemplating applying for Bituach Leumi but not sure that they're eligible, or they've applied and they were rejected in the past, I encourage people just to I on my site, which if you email me, I can say I also have a link, a scheduling link, and I do 20 minutes free consult for people so that they can ask their questions to see if it's even relevant. Right. Sometimes I could just give a piece of information there that sort of that's all that was needed. And then if I realize it's going to be a bigger issue, then I offer people, I work in a package setting, so I have a package for a government form application, or I have what I call the 3-month intense advocacy, like we're transitioning, or I'm bringing my parents over, or I just brought them over, or something happened, or there wasn't it was one healthcare situation and all of a sudden we're faced with another one, and all the things that go on with that. So those are the kinds of things when people, and I always encourage people, just reach out, email me. I mean, I'll say call because my life isn't sort of scheduled like that. I'm very sort of compartmentalized with the time, but I always tell people, email me your question and I'll get back to you in a day or two and I'll tell you, is it relevant? I try to direct people on, I give referrals all the time to people, different people, like case managers and care agencies, and, so I have a network of people that I refer to.
I think that's very comforting when somebody feels like he's not on his own or she's not on her own, and there's some sort of somebody that can just even walk them through the little steps of crossing them to the other side of the road, so to speak.
Exactly. I mean, right? What do they say? Is like a lot of what you do is because you wanted that and you didn't, so it's the same for me. I would have loved if someone had told me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
okay. Well, this has been extremely informative, and time
went by
really quickly.
It really did. It was so fun talking with you, and I'm so glad that we connected.
Yes, it was wonderful. So if anybody has any more questions or concerns, Aviva has really graciously put up her email here, and everybody, anybody who needs help, and she's happy to help. My number's also there if you need me. And
people can also contact me through Facebook if they want, through the private
through your name on Facebook. And also there's there's a place to write comments on this live, so if anybody has and wants to write a question through the comments, they're very welcome to do so. And we're done for tonight, so wishing everybody a good night, and see you again on our next live. Bye, Aviva. Really, really thank you very much for participating tonight.
Thank you for having me.